Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Wednesday, March 3rd. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. And from a local memorial paying tribute to the more than a dozen people who died, now an investigation into human smuggling. Tonight, new information is emerging into that deadly collision near the U.S.-Mexico border. Here's KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman.
Federal officials say before an SUV packed with 25 people collided with a semi-truck, it came through a hole in the U.S.-Mexico border barrier about 30 miles from the crash. Border Patrol officials say they have surveillance video showing that SUV and another vehicle illegally entering the country in this area. Agents arrested the occupants of the other vehicle and say no one was pursuing the SUV before it crashed near El Centro. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement officials now say this is a human smuggling investigation.
It's unfortunate that that number of people were put into that vehicle.
12 people, including the driver, who the CHP says is from Mexicali, died at the scene. The semi-truck driver had moderate injuries and one other person died at a nearby hospital, while survivors with the worst trauma were airlifted to San Diego. 4 patients were taken to UC San Diego Medical Center in Hillcrest, while 2 were brought to Scripps Mercy Hospital. Today, UCSD health officials are reporting that the 4 patients in their care are in serious condition and receiving treatment for a variety of traumatic injuries.
We have been able to identify 10 people of Mexican origin who were deceased in the accident.
Investigators are working with the Mexican consulate to identify everyone involved.
So far, we've been able to contact 6 of the 10 families of the deceased people, and we provided them information about the accident. Some of the families are in Mexico, some of them are in the United States, and we will help them, of course, with the process of the transfer of remains to Mexico.
Today in Chicano Park, people were gathering to remember the lives lost.
Until there's humane immigration policies, these people will risk it all.
Enrique Morones is executive director of Gente Unida, which is a human rights border coalition.
We're going to continue the pressure that the investigation be clear about what happened. We know that the first instinct is to start blaming people. We don't want to blame people. We want to find out what happened so it never happens again.
A federal team from the National Transportation Safety Board is also investigating the crash, and a CHP spokesperson says at this point the semi-truck driver is not suspected of any wrongdoing. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
And we just received an update from San Diego County on the coronavirus pandemic. The latest numbers show cases dropping, but deaths are still high. 352 new cases and 25 deaths reported just today. While there's progress on the vaccination front, one of the county's largest sites suffered yet another setback this afternoon. KPBS reporter John Carroll has the details.
The reason the super vaccination station at Petco Park closed the last 3 times was lack of supply, namely not enough Moderna vaccine to keep the massive operation up and running. Today's closure, not of human doing, but Mother Nature. Officials shut the operation down around noon due to the threat of lightning. No official word on whether it will reopen Thursday, but there isn't any more rain in the forecast. There was hope that the county would move from the purple tier into the less restrictive red tier this week, but those hopes were dashed on Tuesday when the state said we would stay where we are for at least another week. We're now at 10.8 new daily cases per 100,000 people. We need to drop below 7 per 100,000 to enter the next less restrictive red tier. Fletcher says it's just a matter of time before that happens.
We do believe that there is a high possibility that in the next few weeks, in the coming weeks, we will be able to go into that lower tier. Again, we have to see continued progress with lowering our case rate, which means We have to keep vaccinating folks, and everyone has to do the things they're doing every day to slow the spread.
But a different metric means most youth sports can now resume. A county's case rate has to be below 14 per 100,000 for that to happen, and as previously mentioned, we're well below that. One bit of good news, not only for the young ones able to play their favorite sports again, but also, perhaps, as a harbinger for all of us of better times to come. John Carroll, KPBS News.
We're following all of the latest developments at kpbs.org, and if you're not sure where to go for a shot, just click on the Vaccines tab. You can find on our homepage, and you'll find another searchable map with clinic locations and links to make an appointment if you're eligible. 14 years in prison. That's the sentence given today to ex-NFL tight end Kellen Winslow II. The 37-year-old son of Chargers great and Hall of Famer Kellen Winslow agreed to the sentence as part of a new plea deal that had him admit to assault with the intent to rape a woman in North County. He had already been convicted in a 2019 jury trial of rape, indecent exposure, and other crimes involving 3 women, but the jury hung on counts involving 2 other victims. Winslow later pleaded guilty to counts related to those cases and was facing up to 18 years in prison until the new plea agreement. It's a new plan called No Shots Fired, and it's aimed at curbing violence across San Diego. Today, Mayor Gloria and other city and faith leaders gathered to launch the program after a slew of recent shootings. Community leaders are calling for peace and healing and hope the intervention and prevention program can help achieve that.
Too many of us have been forced to accept violence as a regular part of our daily lives. And as mayor, I am not willing to accept this. San Diegans cannot accept this, and we must work together to change this.
The program is a collaboration between the Commission on Gang Prevention and Intervention, the Community Assistance Support Team, law enforcement, and other city partners. Community organizations will effort agreements with gangs in areas most affected by violent crime, such as southeastern San Diego, to cease fire for a 6-month period. Imperial County's farm workers have long suffered from low pay and poor housing options, and COVID-19 has only made things worse. iNewsSource investigative reporter Jennifer Bowman has the story.
In Imperial County, agriculture is king, a $4.5 billion industry. So even during a pandemic, people who live in Mexicali still cross the border for work. Kesifredo Figueroa is one of them.
Como yo estoy con la bendición de Dios, que no tengo miedo, tengo fe en Dios, que no suceda nada de eso, que no tengo temor. No tengo temor en nada de eso, pero sigue que cuidarse uno, eso sí.
Farm workers have come through Calexico for decades, and many live in Mexico because of their low wages. Alex Cardenas is with Vo Neighborhood Medical Clinic, which is helping farm workers with isolation housing. Cardenas says even before COVID-19, the workers weren't always welcomed.
Don't use the restroom unless you're a paying customer. You know, you can only be in the restroom for 5 minutes, no bathing. So imagine you walk into this restaurant and there's all this signature and signage basically not welcoming you.
Now, an encampment has popped up just steps away from the border. It's being used by farm workers, some of them homeless, and others trying to avoid the long commute.
Aquí en Calexico está muy difícil para buscar, encontrar cuarto o departamento. El departamento que hay es muy caro, son $1,200, pero mi trabajo no me permite para tanto.
Calexico officials are now seeking grants for permanent housing. Councilmember Raul Urena says he's seeing more farm workers sleeping on the streets during the pandemic.
This community is very much in solidarity with the farm working community because all of us, including myself, have had parents and grandparents working these very fields so that at some point my generation was able to go to university or was able to at least get a job outside of the fields.
The state is spending an extra $24 million to help farm workers. The money will go towards services to help those isolating because of COVID-19 and financial assistance. For KPBS, I'm iNewsSource investigative reporter Jennifer Bowman.
The United States is at a crossroads in the coronavirus crisis. Cases are down from the peak in January and more people are getting vaccinated. But as Mary Maloney reports, health experts are warning about a potential surge as states relax restrictions.
A celebration for some, as more than half of the states in the union roll back coronavirus restrictions.
It's been a year. I think it's enough.
Mississippi and Texas among those lifting all mask mandates and allowing businesses to operate at full capacity.
I think it should be effective like yesterday and a month ago, and hopefully we never have to do this again.
It's kind of scary. I'm still trying to stay away from too many open places, so I think it's too soon.
Business owners also divided.
I felt like this is where we should have been all along.
I'm not at that comfort level yet. I don't think our staff is either.
There is light at the end of the pandemic tunnel. More shots are going into arms.
2, 1, vaccinate.
COVID case levels, hospitalizations, and deaths are well below the pandemic peak. But
we continue to see troubling signs in the trajectory of the pandemic in the U.S.,
especially as more transmissible variants could spark a surge in COVID cases.
Now is not the time to release all restrictions.
The last thing we need is the Neanderthal thinking that in the meantime everything's fine, take off your mask, forget it. It still matters.
As scientists study the effects of a booster shot to combat the variants and work towards a universal COVID vaccine, some business owners will keep COVID restrictions in place.
Nobody wants business to return more than me. You know, I think we're very close, and I would hate to get in the way of the progress we're making.
Mary Maloney, KPBS News.
The Senate is narrowing the income eligibility for the next round of stimulus checks included in the $1.9 trillion relief bill. President Biden has reportedly agreed to the compromise with moderate Democrats. Individuals earning up to $75,000 and couples earning up to $150,000 would get $1,400 checks per person. The Senate's bill is expected to keep the $400 weekly emergency jobless benefits included in the legislation approved by the House. Feeding San Diego continues organizing food distributions throughout San Diego County. Today, KPBS North County reporter Tanya Thorne joined them in Carlsbad.
Rain or shine, today it was rain. Feeding San Diego volunteers were ready to distribute food to North County households. The drive-through food distribution took place at Legoland California Resort, which is currently closed.
We actually reached out to Feeding San Diego initially because we wanted to do something for our own staff. We've got over 1,000 staff that have been on furlough for the best part of 12 months now.
President of Legoland, Kurt Stocks, has seen how the hospitality industry has been hit by the pandemic and saw this as an opportunity to help his workers and the community.
Today there's been 12,000 cars come through and get some much needed food.
Although Legoland remains closed, Stocks added that recruitment information for Legoland's reopening phase was also given to people that attended the food distribution. Feeding San Diego says they have seen a 50% increase in people facing hunger in San Diego County. Even as the vaccines roll out and people return to work, they anticipate the continuing need for the food distributions that hundreds of cars line up for. In Carlsbad, Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
Well, we had bright sunshine this morning, but that did not last very long. By 10 a.m., a cold, windy, wet storm began to move in. Thunder, lightning, and in some cases hail in some areas across the county, and much needed rain, of course. Our crews capturing this weather video in Poway and North Park just this afternoon. Our mountains could also see a little snow. Here's meteorologist Mark Mancuso.
Our storm system is moving through this evening, but it's going to pass quickly through the area. So by Thursday, we start to see some drier weather, continues dry into the weekend. And over the weekend, we'll see a strong onshore flow, and that will bring cooling for some. And through the evening hours, we'll be dealing with showers and some snow, wet snow above 5,000 feet, accumulating a couple of inches. And with that, winter weather advisories have been issued. So traveling up to the high country, there could be some slippery travel. Now, this is above 5,000 feet. Looking at the storm system, it'll make its move rapidly to the northeast, spreading showers through the southwest tonight. And here you can see our areas of snow up in the high country. As we check that future radar out, well, you can see things quiet down later this evening. So just like showers into this evening, then drier later tonight. Forecast temperatures for tonight down to 44 in Escondido, 43 in Oceanside, San Diego 52. Low 40s Ramona, mid 40s in El Cajon. Borrego Springs is in the low 40s and Mount Laguna is in the low 30s where we will see some snowflakes. That storm progresses rapidly northeast. We're back to drier conditions on Thursday, and with the sun returning. Mid-60s, Oceanside, 67 in San Diego. Quite comfortable here in El Cajon. Ramona's at 66. Mount Laguna's at 48, and Borrego Springs, 73. With the onshore flow, we will see some cooler weather for the weekend. Otherwise, partly to mostly sunny skies. Inland sections quite warm on Friday. Then that onshore flow brings cooling Saturday and Sunday. Into the mountains, a little chilly Thursday and again Saturday. Early next week, some colder, windier weather returning. And in the deserts, quite mild. Nice through the weekend, turning cooler on Monday. And for KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso.
Every bit of rain helps, especially when California's snowpack is only 60% of the average for this time of year. Historically, the state's wettest months are December, January, and February. The Department of Water Resources says we are experiencing yet another dry season. The most recent survey in the Sierra recorded 56 inches of snow and 21 inches of snow water. The San Diego Zoo Global is changing its name to San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance in an effort to reflect the organization's new mission. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says the 105-year-old organization is taking a more holistic approach to conservation.
Two African elephants, Swazi and Nisa, eagerly reach out their trunks, searching for a treat from lead keeper Lauren Coates.
Their skin's super thick and strong, but it's really wrinkly. It's kind of like a tire, like how it has some give to it, even though you can tell it's super strong, and it's super wrinkly, and they have hair all over their body. You can see it here on the trunk, but it's really thick like wires.
Coates reaches into a bucket full of cut-up sweet potatoes, cucumbers, and food pellets.
You need that food?
The keeper says the elephants get treats a couple of times a day as part of their training.
And they should respond to their names. And if they choose to come over, they get reinforcement for leaving, what they were doing and coming over. And then we'll walk away when we're done, and they get to go enjoy all their treats again.
Coates says the elephants have choice and control over what they do in the yard. The treats are a way to reinforce positive behaviors.
In the beginning, it's just getting them to know their name, just to come to us when they're called. And then we can move into more complicated behaviors like blood collections, milk collections, things like that we can use for different studies.
The two moms in this 9-elephant herd have been part of a more than year-long study of elephant milk. Keepers regularly take samples from lactating moms and analyze the milk's composition. Researchers are trying to measure how elephant milk changes over time so they can help orphan elephants in Kenya. Workers at the Riteti Elephant Sanctuary can make age-appropriate formulas that can be the difference between life and death for elephant calves. That connection makes the work in San Diego even more important for both researchers and keepers like Coates.
The work that they do every day is helping animals and plants in the wild.
Nadine Lamberski is the organization's chief conservation officer. She says the new San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance name reflects a holistic approach to conservation.
It is about wildlife, it's also about people, and it's also about, again, the ecosystems that we share. And it's that balance of nature that becomes so important in our work.
She says the concept hit home recently when the coronavirus infected the safari park's gorilla troop. It was the first ever case of human-to-gorilla transmission. Several members of the troop were infected, and the silverback got monoclonal antibody therapy. All have recovered, but Lamberski says the situation offered a lesson.
This is an infection that originated from animals and then went into people, and unfortunately People transmitted it back to animals. But it goes beyond just that. We had a meeting just the other day with our colleagues that work with great apes in the wild, and we talked about how do we protect wild gorillas? What needs to happen to make sure that they don't suffer consequences because of the exposure to this virus.
In fact, COVID-19 helped push the zoo to change the way it does business around the world. San Diego Zoo CEO and President Paul Barabalt says the zoo was making incremental movement in that direction anyway, but the pandemic accelerated the change.
Through this past year, we've all seen how our own human health is tied to the health of wildlife, is tied to the global health of the planet. And so in so many ways, COVID was the catalyst that said, we have to do this now.
Barabalt says the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance brings research skills to the table, but he says that's not enough for a complete solution which engages communities, governments, and other wildlife organizations outside of San Diego.
For us to have a greater impact in conservation, we needed to use this moment to energize everybody, all of our partners, all of our donors, all of our supporters here in San Diego, to be a part of this solution.
Barabalt says the new focus doesn't mean the two parks will be ignored. He says those parks must thrive for the organization to stay financially healthy. Barabalt says the animals, like the African elephants at the safari park, help connect local visitors to the organization's research work. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
And some good news for Padres fans. Governor Newsom said today that the state is close to finalizing plans that would allow fans back to ballparks just in time for opening day.
If we all do our job and we don't let down our guard and spike the ball, wrong sport, but you get the point, then I have all the confidence in the world fans will be back safely in a lot of those outdoor venues.
And Newsom said health officials are working closely with the MLB to ensure a safe plan is developed by April 1st. If fans are allowed back into the stands this season, several modifications are expected, including capacity limits and mandatory face coverings. Both County Board of Supervisor Chairman Nathan Fletcher and Supervisor Jim Desmond have voiced support for getting fans into Petco Park this season. The Aztecs men's basketball team can wrap up a Mountain West championship tonight. They're on the road, taking on UNLV tip-off at 6 o'clock. SDSU is also riding a 10-game winning streak, and a victory tonight will put them in position to receive a good spot in the NCAA March Madness tournament. Another sign that the housing market remains red hot despite the pandemic. A new report found that inventory is so low that homes in January sold in half the time they did a year ago. Mandy Gaither has more on what this means for buyers and for sellers.
Welcome. If you're looking to buy a home this year, get ready to act fast in this red-hot competitive market.
We have twice as much money that we need to put down on the property, and we still just can't find someone to accept the offer.
A new report from the National Association of Realtors found the number of homes for sale is so low that in January, homes sold in half the time they did a year ago. The data shows properties sold typically stayed on the market for only 21 days. That's down from 43 days a year ago.
There have been four homes this year that I was able to put under contract before I actually listed the property on the multiple listing service.
So what's behind this? Real estate investors say three things: high demand, low supply, and near zero mortgage rates, along with the COVID-19 pandemic increasing the need for home space and delaying major expenses like weddings.
Everything was put on hold, so you have a group of people with good savings that are getting into the market.
The number of available properties for sale is at a record low. Just 2 months into 2021, the supply of unsold single-family homes matched December as the lowest level since the National Association of Realtors began tracking in 1982. If you're in the market for a home, experts recommend you stay flexible and explore properties below your maximum loan amount that may need some rehabbing.
So you have that buffer zone, right? And also, don't be afraid of a little bit of grease, a little bit of TLC.
For Consumer Watch, I'm Mandy Gaither.
For the first time in nearly a year, Disney's California Adventure Park is opening for a special limited capacity event. It's called A Touch of Disney. While rides are still closed, visitors will be allowed inside the park to enjoy classic Disney foods like Dole Whip and churros. Some shops will be open and characters will be ready to take physically distanced photos. The event kicks off on March 18th and tickets are $75, which includes admission, parking, and a $25 dining card.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the battle begins in the U.S. Senate over President Biden's nearly $2 trillion coronavirus aid bill. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
An American music icon has turned one of her songs into a pandemic public service announcement.
Vaccine, 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 vaccine. I'm begging of you, please don't hesitate.
That's Dolly Parton, of course. She changed the lyrics to her hit Jolene for a special occasion, her own COVID-19 vaccination. And she tweeted out this video with the caption, quote, Dolly gets a dose of her own medicine. And that's because she donated $1 million to help fund the Moderna vaccine that she just received. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.